2017 was just a crazy year. And it felt like madness collectively erupted. Raiders were looting through the cyberspace. There were lives at stake. But what mattered most was personal gain. Fake news and false flags made it harder and harder to understand who was winning and what. The ones who spoke up were silenced. And so we continue to lose some of the finest members of our community. For what? State actors tested their arsenal and brought machines to a halt, or let them spin just a tiny bit faster. Battles considered to be won were lost again. Heroes of the past were too far away to help. And we were all tired and fearful and scared. We were stifled in ways that we hadn't had to be before. And at some point, everything melted together and it became so dark that we just didn't know what to do. Was this the new norm? And then you think, what else can I do? What else can I be? What else can I possibly give? And what you give is yourself. And so you came here to Heidelberg, the hackers' sanctuary city, a place where our motto is to make the world a safer place. A motto that is for the best of times, when you feel empowered and at your most creative, with no one to hold you back. But it's also our motto in the midst of the struggle. The good news is, though, that you are now part of the Troopers family. You are surrounded by the best and brightest. So take this time to learn all you can from each other. Share ideas. Expand the community by welcoming those who are new. And know that all you do here will only serve to make you stronger out there. We are troopers.
You guys are kidding me. I'm talking louder than all of you put together, and basically with like a tiny microphone. Can I hear it? Good morning, troopers! A little bit better. Welcome to your Heidelberg Hacker Sanctuary City. Woo! All right, I'm gonna have to ask you guys to wake up a little bit more. I said, welcome to your Hacker Sanctuary City! Thank you! Who here is new to Troopers? Raise your hands. Oh my gosh, that's so great. All right, really fast, I just want to give a really quick overview about what makes Troopers so unique and so special. You see behind me several logos, ER&W, Insight, Research, our newest daughter company, SecTools. And the reason why this is so important is you're going to see a lot of people walking around today in these crew shirts. They're not at customer appointments. They're not at the office. The crew, they're here. Every banner that has gone up, the network, the badge, the challenges, right down to the people knowing where the bathrooms are and what time the buses get here, is all happening because ER&W Universe is closed for this week, and we are in this building to bring you the best troopers ever. Yeah! So some of you may have noticed our new badge. It's quite beautiful, right? This is not just a name tag. Rumor has it there might be 3 or 4 special signals that can be picked up, and that's really important because we have quite a few challenges going on. So the badge is one of your challenges. You might want to check out blogs.trooper.de. We have some non-technical challenges, so we have Meet Heimo, the 10K run. We have Hacken and Rom Zeigelberg offering some really cool stuff in our makerspace. And we have a couple surprises, and for those of you that are hardcore challenge people, this may or may not be a hint. And you might be asking, why am I doing these challenges when there's also all these cool talks to see, which you should be attending? But that is because for every challenge that you successfully complete, you're going to earn a token, and that token is going to increase the likelihood that you are going to win one of these really kick-ass prizes during our closing notes. So just a little teaser, get excited. But now to talk a little bit about what's about to happen the next few days. This evening, all of you are invited to our shared dinner at the Culture Brauerei. We'll have buses that come here to pick you up. You're going to get that information on our info screens, as well as you can always follow Twitter and do the hashtag TR18 to see updates and information. And after the shared dinner, but at the same location, we also have our epic Packet Wars hacking challenge. You have until 3 o'clock today to register. You can register as an individual, and we'll put you on a pickup team, or you can register as a team. But 3 o'clock today is the deadline, so make sure that you register. Go to troopers.de and go to our social events page. All the information for what you need to do is right there. Now, who are my runners? Can I get like a hey? Woo! Hey. Everybody else is like, no, I like sleep. That's okay. 6:45 tomorrow morning, the runners, we shall be meeting in the lobby of the Crown Plaza. This is 15 minutes earlier than normal, but every year we have a few more runners that are coming to join us, and we want to make sure there's enough time to do the run and get back here. And you might be asking me, why, Nikki, why would I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and then run up the side of a mountain? Like, why? There's a couple actually really good reasons. The first reason is it's one of the best views of Heidelberg from the top of Philosopher Weg. It is, thank you. The second reason is that feeling of accomplishment. You've ran up the side of a mountain before coming to a conference, so you can be like, yes, I did this. It's awesome. But the third reason is for every kilometer that you run, 5 euros is donated on your behalf to our Troopers charity. And this year, our Troopers charity is Habibi Works. For those of you that are not familiar with it, Habibi Works is a huge maker space that's located in northern Greece. It works with the refugee population there, and they get to do a lot of building, a lot of hacking, but more importantly, it's empowering the refugees to be able to work and live among the local population. Another way that you can contribute with the charity is by joining us for our lunch auction that's going to take place tomorrow. Renee Graff will be leading the auction. It's pretty awesome. Thank you to the speakers that donated items. A lot of people brought gifts from home, some cool gadgets. I hear there's a giant unicorn, and maybe a couple other surprises. So not only do you get to help a really amazing cause, but also you get to take home some really cool stuff. Now, I have a question. Who are the students that submitted motivational letters? Can you raise your hands? Woo! This year, Troopers made the decision to do away with our student rate. Instead, we asked students to submit motivational letters telling us why Troopers was important to them and how they felt that by attending, they could also contribute to the Troopers family. And we were very, very proud to be able to give out 30 scholarships this year for students to be able to attend for the whole week. So let's see the students again. Raise your hands. Please make sure to make them feel welcome, say hi, encourage them to stick around in the InfoSec community because we're really happy to have them here. Now, I want to give one really happy, awesome shout out to Black Hoodie. Troopers was so lucky this year to be able to partner with Black Hoodie, which for those of you that are not aware is a reverse engineering course for ladies. We had over 16 attendees this year. They were amazing, empowered. I got to talk to some of them afterwards, the trainers. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for being here. And it was really incredible. Now, talk a little bit about Troopers, the ingredients of Troopers. You guys are obviously in it. Hi. Crew's obviously in it. Whoop, whoop. But we're missing somebody. We are missing the speakers, which I'm pretty sure is partly why you guys are all here. So I am very happy and very proud to announce your Troopers 2018 speakers. And just so you guys are also aware, 37 of our speakers and trainers for this year are new first-time presenters. Woo! Now, I am personally really excited to introduce our keynote for Troopers 18. A group of us were able to go to H2HC last October and hear the second day keynote that was given. And at the end of it, all of us came together and said, this should be at Troopers. So later, when we started talking about what's the theme going to be, the opening video, what message do we want to impart, it was clear that we had to call Mike Ossmann. So we called him and we said, all right, we got this idea. It's a little crazy, but we really want to do it. And Michael was like, all right, I have an idea. Let me take this to the next level. And so with that being said, I want you to raise your hack RFs in the air and give it up for Michael Ossmann.
Maybe I should kill my screensaver. Thank you all so much for being here this morning, and thank you, Nikki, for that kind introduction, and thank you to Troopers for having me. I'm a little nervous. This is kind of a big thing for me. I'm truly honored to be here today, but I have to admit that I actually kind of feel like I should not be here. By education, I'm a musician, a trombone player. I should be playing in an orchestra or delivering pizzas or something. So how is it that I'm standing here giving a keynote at my favorite information security conference? How is it that I even have a favorite information security conference? I was talking to Dominic Spill recently, and I said to him that I don't believe that I suffer from imposter syndrome. I'm perfectly comfortable taking on some kind of project that is totally outside my area of expertise, and then standing up in front of an audience to talk about such a project. And I feel that the exploration of an unfamiliar subject is one of the best opportunities we have to learn. And that we can also learn much from those who are willing to speak about the explorations into their own explorations into personally uncharted territory. And so even though I've never felt like an imposter before, I do feel a little bit out of place today. And this feeling has prompted me to think a great deal about why I'm here, how I got here, and why you are here. How is it you came to be at Troopers today? Why did you decide to come to this event? Now, I'd like you each to think about that. If you've been to Troopers before, why did you come back? I know it's the ice cream, but why else did you come back? It's Nikki? Yeah. One way to think about this is to work your way backwards, through events that led you to this time and place. And so as an example, I'd like to tell my own story in reverse, how I came to be standing up here today. So in reverse, the immediate reason I'm here today is because Nikki invited me. She invited me to speak to you, and she did so, as she mentioned, after hearing me speak at H2HC in Brazil last October. I spoke about patents, open source, the value of ideas, and the mythology of invention. She enjoyed the talk and wanted me to share some of those thoughts with you today, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But first, I'd like to continue looking back at how I came to be here. Now, although she thought that the subject matter was interesting, I think that maybe a more significant reason Nikki and the Troopers crew chose to invite me was that they enjoyed the way I spoke about things that are personally important to me. This is significant, I think. I spend a lot of time thinking about and working on things that are important to me, and I think that this is something we should all strive to do more of in our lives. Why was I giving a keynote at H2HC or at any event? I'm more comfortable giving technical talks, honestly. I feel that I should be giving the last presentation of the con, like I did at my first Troopers, not the first presentation. But I've been offered a few of these opportunities recently. And I think the main reason for this is simply that I've developed a reputation as a speaker by giving technical talks. And as that reputation has grown, I get more invitations to speak, and I like to accept them when I'm able, because I truly enjoy attending and speaking at events in our community. I'm more comfortable speaking about technical subjects, but you can't hack sharks every year. One of the things I enjoy about speaking is that I don't always feel comfortable meeting people. I find it easier to stand in front of an audience than to introduce myself to someone at a cocktail party. When you speak about something that is truly interesting to you, people will later introduce themselves to you to talk about your subject. You should try it. You really should. It is a wonderful way to meet people. So how is it that I became a prolific contributor to HackerCons? Mostly, I think I've been able to do this because I've chosen to prioritize research, education, and the community. These are important things to me. Also important are the development and dissemination of tools and techniques. I find it just as rewarding to support the research of others as it is to accomplish my own research. All of these priorities led me to start Great Scott Gadgets, a company dedicated to putting open source tools into the hands of innovative people. It was by forming Great Scott Gadgets that I was able to start spending a large amount of my time on things that are, in my opinion, important. I feel incredibly privileged to be a part of the Troopers family for my 7th year this year. In 2011, I heard about Troopers from a friend who spoke here, and I saw the amazing Nixie Tube badge that Jeff had designed for the event. I was so jealous. I came to my first Troopers at the very next opportunity in 2012. At my first Troopers, I was inspired by you and your research, a keynote given by Haroon Mir. I'm sure some of you remember it. It was an InfoSec remix of a talk by the same title given in 1986 by Richard Hamming, the famous Bell Labs scientist. Now, Hamming realized that people seem to think that great science is done by luck. He argued against this notion, pointing out that the main reason certain scientists have repeated success solving important problems is simply that they prioritize work on important problems. It sounds so simple, but if you focus on important research, from time to time you will accomplish important research. One of the things I considered in 2012 was that my research wasn't the only thing that was important to me, but I found it helpful to apply this principle to other priorities in my life. Deliberately spend time on things that are important to you. Deliberately spend time on things that are important to you. It sounds like such an obvious thing we should all do, but it is easy to fail at this. It is easy to allow the unimportant to creep up our priority lists. It takes effort and thoughtful determination to identify goals of importance and to consistently allocate time for important things. My first Troopers in 2012 was only a few months after I quit my job doing wireless communication security research at a government research lab in Boulder, Colorado. I quit my job so that I could focus on Great Scott Gadgets, which was born from Project Ubertooth, a personal side project to build a low-cost Bluetooth test tool. I had done some interesting work and had learned a great deal while working at Boulder Labs. It was largely because of things I learned there that I was able to develop Ubertooth and start Great Scott Gadgets and pursue my dream of teaching, researching, and empowering other researchers. I learned technical skills like digital signal processing and electronic design during my time at the labs, but the main reason I was recruited to work there in the first place was that I had written some articles on Wi-Fi security. I had developed a minor Wi-Fi exploit or two, but I wasn't known as a security researcher at the time. My articles simply provided a summary of work done by other researchers and called attention to some deficiencies in the responses of vendors to known vulnerabilities in their products. I was hired at the labs not for technical skills, but for my ability to analyze and communicate wireless security issues. Prior to my work at the Boulder Labs, I worked in IT security. I served as an information security officer for a hospital system, and I had done some consulting. It was a consulting gig at In-N-Out Burger, a hamburger chain based in California, that inspired me to write those articles about Wi-Fi security. During that engagement, I came to realize that many companies were deploying what they thought were fixes to critical security vulnerabilities, but that the Wi-Fi vendors had grossly overstated the value of the improvements. I felt that it was important to bring awareness to the fact that the new systems were just as vulnerable as the systems they replaced. I guess you could say that my entire career pursuing ways to serve this community came about because of a burger joint in California. I am here today because I stumbled upon something while eating a cheeseburger, and because I felt the urge to do an important thing. When I was a child, people often asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I usually answered an electrical engineer or an inventor. Somehow it has turned out that I am now both of those things, more or less, though I took a circuitous path to get here. I didn't study engineering or anything technical in school. I didn't pursue a career in the creation of technology. I didn't learn how to design electronics until I wanted to build tools in order to accomplish other things. When I was young, I had a distinct image in my head of an inventor. Recently, I've tried to recall how this image was formed. What were my role models? Edison? Frankenstein? Dr. Bunsen Honeydew? In school, I learned that Edison invented the light bulb, Bell invented the telephone, Ford invented the automobile, Marconi invented the radio, and the Wright brothers invented the airplane. I've since learned that none of these things is true exactly. A century from now, I honestly believe that school children will be taught that Gates or Jobs invented the computer. I'm not kidding. I really think that's what kids will learn. For a wonderful case study, I recommend Bruce Boy's presentation at the 2015 Open Hardware Summit titled, "What the Wright Brothers Can Teach Us About Open Source versus Closed Source." Bruce presented compelling evidence that challenged what I learned in school about the invention of powered flight, even showing how Orville and Wilbur Wright, through a series of questionable legal actions, actually harmed the progress of aviation more than they helped it. Bruce argued convincingly that the Wright brothers set back the aviation industry in the United States 20 years behind other countries. The Wright brothers had a patent which they interpreted very broadly, claiming that it covered all manned-powered flight, when, in fact, the text of the patent was much more specific. They were relentless in their pursuit of outrageous licensing fees from fellow aviation pioneers. At the start of the Great War, the United States had only a few airplanes, while European countries had thousands. There were many inventors of flight around the world, all of them learning from each other and making incremental advances. The Wikipedia article on the history of flight mentions many of these, but repeatedly cites the Smithsonian Institution's assertion that the Wright brothers were the first in flight. What the Wikipedia article does not mention is that after Orville Wright's death, the executors of his estate sold the original Wright Flyer to the Smithsonian for $1 under a contract that stipulated that the Smithsonian would never make any statement or public display suggesting the capability of manned-powered flight before the Wright brothers' successful flight in 1903. I learned in school in the United States that Eli Whitney invented the cotton gin, an achievement credited in large part for setting the stage for the Industrial Revolution. I also learned that someone else invented the cotton gin independently, and that Whitney's patent was later disputed. This was described to me as a shocking coincidence. Surely the probability of such invention, such simultaneous invention, is so minuscule because it violates our mythology of invention. In our mythology, the inventor is a man, which is stupid. The inventor works alone, which is stupid. Sometimes the inventor has one assistant, but the assistant is not acknowledged as a contributor, which is stupid. The inventor spends a tremendous amount of time in his workshop, which is the one part of the mythology that is probably correct. Yet it disagrees with the greatest myth of all, that the invention is the result of a single transcendent moment of inspiration. Eureka! The Eureka moment is the core of the mythology of invention. Breakthroughs arrive supposedly not by climbing one step at a time, but by leaping to a great height all at once. The capacity to achieve such acts of genius is what separates inventors from us mortals. It is why I think most of us hesitate to call ourselves inventors. We don't want to be seen as arrogant, self-proclaimed geniuses, or worse, as crackpot practitioners of pseudoscience or chasers of the latest consumer craze. We don't want our creations compared to the light bulb. Neither do we want them compared to the jump to conclusions mat. I don't know why the Eureka myth is so powerful. It seems to be something we want to believe despite all evidence. It extends beyond inventors to all sorts of creative people. Mozart, it is said, held in his head the entire Jupiter Symphony, his longest, in a single moment. Ridiculous. The Eureka myth, by the way, is the title of a book by Jessica Silby. As I developed the ideas for this talk, I started calling the whole mythology of invention the Eureka myth. Eventually, I looked it up to see if anyone had used the phrase before. It turned out to have been independently discovered. More than once. Most notably as the title of Silby's book that presents evidence that challenges the mythology of invention. Simultaneous invention, or multiple discovery, is in fact the normal way that inventions happen, not the rare exception I thought as a child. If you take the time to investigate the origin of almost any technological breakthrough in history, you'll find that the mythology doesn't agree with reality. Progress is made in small steps by many people, not in great leaps by a solitary genius. Eli Whitney was involved in patent disputes with not only one person, but several. Some were independent discoverers of similar technology. Others made incremental improvements to Whitney's cotton gin, which itself was an incremental improvement to existing technology. If you were somehow able to go back in time and identify all the independent inventors of the cotton gin, you would probably end up with a very long list of names. And it is possible that Eli Whitney would not be among them. It's moderately likely that he took the idea from a woman he knew or a black slave he owned. But women and slaves weren't granted patents in those days. When I was young, I dreamed of one day holding my own patents. I hoped that I could be one of those special people with the gift of intuitive inspiration, that my eurekas would somehow make the world a better place. I didn't realize at the time how absurd the patent system is. Patents confer a government-granted monopoly to the single genius creator of a new technology. The system makes sense, however, only if you believe the mythology of invention. The supposed benefits to society are that patents incentivize invention and that they result in the publication of ideas that would otherwise be kept secret. The publication benefit is easily refuted. I've heard that it is common in the technological industries for commercial engineers to be advised not to read patents for fear of accusations of willful infringement. I do not read patents. The benefit just doesn't outweigh the risk. If the creators of new technology actively avoid reading the patents of other creators, then their publication can have only a negative impact, not a positive one, on the progress of technology. If you choose not to read patents, you won't miss much. In general, technology is pretty easy to reverse engineer. We all took things apart when we were kids to see how they worked. It's literally child's play. The other benefit of patents, that they incentivize invention, is easier to believe. Our mythology tells us that an invention is a rare occurrence, that inventors are special people without whom we would languish in a dark age. The reality, of course, is that invention is a normal thing that humans do every day. Ask yourself why you invent things, small or large. Ask the people you meet at Troopers what motivates their creativity. I bet you'll hear things like, I enjoy being creative. I like finding better ways to do things. I try to give back to those who create technology I use. Or, it makes my job easier. I bet you won't hear people say, I patent my inventions and that's how I got rich. There are a lot of people these days talking about patent reform. They usually point to software patents or business process patents, and they propose reducing the reach of the patent system in some way. I do not support patent reform. Patents are harmful to society, in my opinion, and they should be abolished. The harm caused by patents is easy to see. By restricting new technologies to just one producer, they slow the adoption of technology and make it harder for others to make incremental improvements. The only justification for the patent system is that they produce more benefit than harm. But the benefits only appear to exist if you believe in the mythology of invention. Around the turn of the century, I had an idea that might have been patentable. I had recently moved to the mountains of Colorado, and driving on a windy road one dark night in my mountain town, I nearly hit a deer that was standing right in the middle of the road. I didn't see it at first because it was standing just past a fairly tight turn, just to the left of my headlights until I had completed the turn. Now, fortunately, I was able to stop quickly enough to avoid a collision, but the moment of fright got me thinking, why were my headlights pointed in the direction my car was facing, not the direction my car was turning? Wouldn't it make more sense to have headlights that swivel from side to side as the steering wheel is turned? I thought that my idea from that moment of inspiration was pretty good, and I thought that instead of messing with my existing headlights, I could experiment with a third headlight mounted on the car. Now, I never did retrofit my car with an experimental headlight, but a year or two later, I saw an advertisement from Lexus touting the exact same idea. What if I had already applied for a patent for the idea? Or what if I had started a company to develop it, holding the idea as a trade secret? Would I have been justified in assuming that Lexus had stolen my idea? Would I have felt compelled to sue? As it happened, I don't think I ever told anyone about the idea, so I easily concluded that it was independently invented by someone else. My idea may have been good, but it was not unique. Over the past few years, several automakers, including BMW, Mercedes, Toyota, and Volvo, have been sued by Adaptive Headlamp Technologies Incorporated for infringement of a 2007 patent for headlights that swivel when the steering wheel is turned. Adaptive Headlamp Technologies Incorporated is a subsidiary of an intellectual property licensing company, which is what most of us would call a patent troll. When I heard about the lawsuits, I recalled that old Lexus advertisement and did a quick search for other prior art. Guess what I found? a car called the Tucker 48 had a third headlight that swiveled as a steering wheel turned in 1948. Automakers today are actually spending money defending themselves from recent patent claims about technology invented more than a half-century ago. My moment after almost hitting that deer was a eureka moment. I think we've all had eureka moments in our lives. We just haven't had the big one yet. We're like gambling addicts, convinced by our small wins that we'll someday have the big score. And I think that may be one of the reasons we want to believe the eureka myth. But the big score, the big eureka, is a myth. As Richard Hamming pointed out, great progress is not made by luck. The eureka that is a big idea, not a small one, is something that doesn't happen in real life. It's a story we concoct when we tell the tales of past invention. Small eurekas do happen in real life, and they occur to many different people at roughly the same time. Eurekas can be wonderful experiences and can lead to great things. But don't be fooled into thinking that a eureka is unique. Society will not be deprived of an invention just because one person didn't follow up on a moment of inspiration. The better the idea is, the more likely it is that someone else will have, or already has had, the same idea. When I tell people that I support abolishing packets, I get some strange looks. Evidently, this is considered a radical notion, but it seems pretty obvious to me. Even if I can convince someone that ideally we would be better off without patents, my listener typically suggests that an abrupt transition would be too difficult, that there would be unintended consequences. It's the same argument that many people make when opposing marijuana legalization. Now, I live in Colorado, one of the states leading the way toward marijuana legalization in the United States. Let me tell you about unintended consequences. Tourism is up. Tax revenue is up. Teen marijuana use is down and below the national average. Admittedly, there have been some problems, some negative consequences. I've heard that we're having a problem with unemployment among prison guards. Sometimes what seems like a negative consequence to an individual is actually a great benefit to society as a whole. Now, I haven't been able to confirm the prison guard unemployment rumor, just so you know. But what I have found out is that prison guards are among the major opponents of marijuana legalization. You know who else opposes marijuana legalization? Pharmaceutical companies. Apparently, they're more concerned about the sales of their patented drugs than they are about sick people feeling better. When the Nobel Prize is handed out, it is increasingly given to more than one person. I've heard some folks say that this is due to the fact that science has progressed to the point at which no single person is able to make major achievements. There just isn't any low-hanging fruit out there anymore, supposedly. In certain areas of research, it is true that groups are required. But in general, I think it is nonsense that individuals are less able to contribute to science than they were in the past. History is jam-packed with people claiming that all the discoveries have already been made. They're always wrong. Sometimes multiple Nobels are given to independent discoverers of the same things. It isn't uncommon at all, and it may be that modern communication technology makes it more apparent when multiple discovery happens. Sometimes Nobels are given to a team of collaborators. If scientists are collaborating more than they once did, I think that's great. But it is probably a sign that modern technology has made collaboration easier, not that collaboration is more necessary than it was in the past. Another possible reason for the increase in multiple Nobel winners is that collaborators may be more likely to be acknowledged today than they were in the past. Have you ever heard of Rosalind Franklin? Perhaps not, but you probably have heard of Watson and Crick, who won the Nobel Prize for their work on DNA that was based on her data. I have mixed feelings about the Nobel Prize. I think it is great to honor those who advance science, but the prize seems to perpetuate the mythology of invention, especially by having a policy that a prize cannot be given to more than 3 people. It is a disservice to humanity to insist that the most important scientific contributions cannot come from 4 or more people. The folks who somehow produce idea after idea are my favorite people, not for the value of any one idea, but for the spirit of inventiveness. Most of them will never even be considered for a Nobel Prize. Now, there may be Nobel winners or future winners in this room. Would you like to be one of them? There is one way to make absolutely certain that you are not, and that is to refrain from publishing any of your ideas. Hold your best idea in your head. Keep it secret. Don't let anyone know about the precious gem you've stored there, except it's not precious. Your idea has no value until you do something with it or tell someone about it. Part of the Eureka myth is that you only need the right idea to make $1 million. It could even be something simple like the pet rock or the bread climp. The truth is that implementation matters. No investor in the world is going to fund your startup based on an idea alone. How are you developing your idea? Who are your customers? How have you proven that you are capable of delivering something that your customers want? What makes you more likely to succeed than your competition? An idea is a seed, but seeds are all over the place. Successful businesses are seeds that have been planted in fertile soil and have found the right amount of water and sun over a long period of time. It takes work to turn an idea into a product, and it takes even more work to deliver that product to satisfy customers. Thomas Edison famously said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. I've recently heard Edison called the Elon Musk of his day. But somehow, despite that quotation, my childhood image of Edison is more Doc Brown than Elon Musk. My company makes open source hardware tools for the information security industry. Something I did not anticipate when I started my business is how difficult it would be to explain to people what I do. The elevator pitch for Great Scott Gadgets requires an unusually slow elevator. First, I have to convince people that hacking is a worthwhile endeavor. Then I have to explain open source hardware. And it turns out that this is a significantly higher hurdle. When I started making hardware, it seemed perfectly natural to me that my hardware should be open source. I spent many years in IT, starting long before it was called IT, and without exception, every single thing I did in my career that I was proud of was something that I accomplished with the help of open source software. That is no exaggeration. I wanted to give back to the community that had given me so much. For me, making everything I produce open source, software or hardware or whatever, isn't an option. It is simply the right thing to do. This is, to me, a deeply important thing. Elevator people often ask me if I have patents. I ask them if they'd like to join me in a longer elevator. Usually, though, I avoid the subject of patent abolition and of the ethics of open source. Instead, I tell them how ineffective patents are, especially for small companies. Every successful product gets cloned these days. Patented or not, open source or not, by making my products open source, I disseminate my inventions as widely as I can. I give my ideas the greatest possible chance of having a positive effect on the world. And everyone who hears about me and one of my ideas is a potential customer, even if they were exposed to my creation through a clone. Sure, you can buy a HarkRF or any number of other HackRF clones from China, but if you hear about HackRF and search for it online, you'll find my company as the first search result. The marketing angle has the elevator people half convinced by the end of the ride. And I think the reason they're only half convinced is that they can't let go of that old myth. They think that great ideas have great value, and that by giving away my ideas, I'm losing value. When I'm away from home, I often travel with a toy guitar to entertain myself. let's say you were to sit down with me to try my guitar. You like it, so you steal it from me. I would be sad because I couldn't play my guitar anymore. I would be deprived of my ability to play it. But let's say you sit down with me and you do not steal my guitar. You leave having learned a song that I wrote. Now, I would still have the guitar, and I would still have my song. I would be deprived of nothing. I reject the notion that scarcity increases the value of ideas. The opposite is, in fact, true. Ideas have value in proportion to how much they are shared. If I ever decide to stop selling open source hardware and instead pursue a career in music, the popularity of my songs would be directly related to my ability to sell tickets to performances. This is exactly what the elevator people don't understand. Ideas have value in proportion to how much they are shared. I recently had the opportunity to speak at an experimental physics conference. It was very interesting getting to know those scientists and their work and how excited they were, to see how excited they were to share their work with one another. The opportunity to address that audience got me thinking about similarities and differences between the scientific community and the hacker community and the ways that we share ideas. In the debate between soft science and hard science, the experimental physicists I spoke to seem to have the advantage. Hackers do science too, but it's a mixture of both hard and soft. We study computing systems, creations not of nature but of humans. Much of what interests us is how humans use computers and how there are strengths and weaknesses in whole systems that include both technological and human elements. A growing segment of the information security community, however, studies harder aspects of computing technology. For example, in recent years, there have been great advances in formal verification of computer programs. It's now possible to mathematically prove the correctness of many programs. At my first Troopers, I learned about the Langsec movement from the wonderful talk given by Sergey Bratis and Meredith Patterson. Researchers in the Langsec movement are taking a language theoretic approach to computer security. They look at information systems and see interfaces between various components. An interface could, for example, be a user interface that accepts input directly from a human, or it could be a network interface that accepts input from another computer, or it could be an application programming interface that accepts input from some other code running on the same computer, even if linked to the process that's handling the input. Anywhere input is processed, Langsec researchers point out that the input can be thought of as a language, and that the language's complexity can be classified according to a hierarchy that has existed for decades in the field of linguistics. More complex languages require more complex input processing, and it has been shown that only the simplest languages can be processed with computer programs that can be proven to terminate on all possible inputs. The halting problem, known since the early years of computer science, tells us that more complex languages require input processing that may never end. If you can't prove that your program terminates on all possible inputs, how can you prove that it correctly processes all possible inputs? The security of every computing system, therefore, depends on simplicity of input languages. This astonishing result that simply combining decades-old linguistics research with decades-old computer science research is that we can see that most modern information systems have no hope of ever providing security guarantees. If you want security guarantees, you must, at a minimum, specify input languages throughout your system that do not exceed a certain complexity. And it may seem strange that the application of linguistics, the study of natural languages of humans, to computer science, the study of machines created by humans, yields a hard result regarding the provable correctness of computer programs. I am frequently astonished by this myself, but it is a result I cannot refute. So I encourage everyone who creates information systems to pay attention and to define protocols and interfaces with grammatical simplicity that will allow for future security guarantees. This is an important thing for our community. The information security community includes both hackers and academic researchers. And the reason I mention the Langsec movement is that it is, to me, the most exciting research happening in the field. And because it was started by a small number of people at the intersection of those two groups, hackers and academics. I don't believe that this was an accident. I believe that there are some things that hackers do well, and that there are other things that academics do well. We have much to learn from one another. Hackers are good at finding one provable aspect of a system with many unprovable characteristics. When presented with a security claim, hackers like to show that the claim is false. You say your software is unbreakable? Well, here's one way that it's already broken. There's a saying in the hacker community, you can't argue with a root shell. This means that when someone points out how your system is broken, it is an irrefutable proof. Sergey has pointed out that an exploit is proof by construction of the vulnerability of a system. Hackers are terrible at writing things down. We enjoy sharing information, but we often share our most important results in presentations at conferences without any written paper. When we do write things down, it is usually in a blog post or an informal publication like FRAC or the International Journal of Proof of Concept or Get the Fuck Out. These are wonderful publications, but they lack the rigorous peer review of academic journals. Now, I am often bewildered by the fact that much of the most important knowledge of the hacker community is perpetuated in an oral tradition. Hackers are not always good at citing past research. In the information security community, as far as I've been able to observe, hackers often cite other hackers, and academics cite other academics. But neither group is very good at citing research or even knowing about research from the other group. Hackers are good at open source, and this is perhaps the most important thing that academics can learn from hackers, in my opinion. Hackers created the infrastructure of the internet out of open source software and open documentation, and they have called the internet home for as long as the internet has existed. Open source software, and now hardware, is a tremendously important part of hacker culture. When we share deliberately. And we do everything in our power to ensure that others can take advantage of the work that we share. One thing we do not do is publish findings behind paywalls. When I was invited to speak at that physics conference, one of the first things I did was to look for papers from the previous conference. Even though I did not find the full text in any central repository, I was pleased to be able to find every paper I looked for, complete with a Creative Commons attribution license available on the web. I was delighted to find this because somehow this is not yet the norm. Sadly, there are still many notable journals that do not provide open access to scientific research. In my opinion, there is no excuse for this in the 21st century. The most important thing you can do to advance science is to disseminate your findings as widely as you can. In this century, that means you must make your work freely available online. If you are publishing research in 2018 behind a paywall, I'm not sure what you're doing, but it isn't science. Another important and often overlooked aspect of science is the reproducibility of experiments. If you publish your results but hide your idea, if you don't share the software that is central to your research, if you don't share your data or describe your equipment in sufficient detail for someone to reproduce your experimental apparatus, you aren't doing science. These words may sound harsh, but I hope you'll give them some thought. We live in a world today in which the value of science is disputed. There are political voices growing louder every day telling people that science is a system of beliefs, not a mechanism for finding truth. Even well-educated people who think they have an appreciation for science are not immune to pseudoscience crazes. Just look at the labels in any grocery store in the United States to see what I'm talking about. There is one great thing you can do to demonstrate the value of science, and that is to do the best science you can. Share your results as widely as you can. Share all the information necessary to reproduce your results. Convince your audience how you've avoided fooling yourself into believing a false conclusion. Share all your evidence. If you don't, you will plant seeds of doubt that undermine confidence in science itself. Some of you may think this advice doesn't apply to you because you don't think of what you do as science. But hackers do science all the time. Every time you find a new type of bug or a new technique, every time you learn something that other people haven't figured out yet, every time you share this knowledge with your peers, you are doing science. In fact, if you share as effectively as you can, you may be doing a better job of science than many of the people who call themselves scientists. I recently reread Cargo Cult Science, the famous 1974 lecture by Richard Feynman. And in this wonderful lecture, Feynman explored the difference between science and pseudoscience and pointed out that a lot of people who think they're doing science actually aren't. He encouraged scientists to do a better job of sharing their research and making their experiments more repeatable, making the excellent point that honest and thorough publication is essential to scientific integrity. Lack of this kind of integrity is nothing new. Feynman discussed how bad science had been done throughout the 20th century. In the 21st century, however, we have an opportunity to establish better standards for science. It is an opportunity created by the internet, a tool which has enabled better sharing of information. The opportunity is also created by open source culture. Open source culture that has shown the value of openly licensing information instead of just publishing it. Our new standards for science should combine the best of hacker culture with the best of traditional science. Every contribution you make, every paper you write, every line of code you publish, every hardware design you place under an open source license serves to advance science. If there is one thing that should be apparent to everyone here at this conference, it is that you are a part of something greater than yourself. The achievements of this community are made by the combined efforts of many people. The progress of science and technology is made in small steps, not giant leaps. So remember that your contributions, no matter how small, are important. Remember that they will have the greatest impact if you describe them thoroughly and honestly, and if you do your best to disseminate the information as widely as possible. These things I find important. You may not agree with the opinions I've shared today, but I hope you will agree that many of the issues I've raised are in some way important to our community. I hope that you'll spend time at the conference considering your own opinions on these issues and thinking about other things that are important to you. 2017 was a difficult year for me personally in several ways. It was a difficult time for many of us, I think. But we survived, and now we find ourselves in Heidelberg, where we have a chance to make the future better. Remember why you came to Troopers. Remember how you ended up here. You have a rare opportunity this week to participate in a unique event that combines excellent content, fun activities, and some of the finest and most interesting people you'll ever have the chance to spend time with. Deliberately spend time on things that are important to you and make the world a safer place. Thank you.
Everybody!